We have a packed shiur, and we have to finish at 12 because I gotta run to, unfortunately, conduct a funeral. I have to finish at 12. I have a we're gonna try to finish at 12, and so I would like to.
Clark is zooming it on 1 o'clock.
I know, but I need to get
Okay.
to the
I'm just telling everyone.
cemetery, and
Good.
all this kind of stuff. So
Is this the Aronoff one?
yes.
Diane Hyatt.
Okay, so I'm going to try to mute everybody, and we're gonna jump right in. So happy to see that everybody's here. For some reason, something is not happening. Okay, we're gonna try it. Why this is not. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the parallelism, the similarity between two stories. One is the one that we're familiar, the 10 plagues that were brought on Mitzrayim at the times of the Exodus. And the other one is the perhaps less of a known story that we started dealing with last week. Is the story of the Plishtim after they took the ark. And what happens to them is what we're going to discuss today. They're having some serious plagues as well. So I thought it was interesting to compare the plagues of Egypt and the Plishtim, the Philistines. Wanted to dedicate this class in memory of Fela Chappelle, Alea Shalom, that we're still in the Shiva for Fela, very, very special human being, of course. I think that if you didn't know her personally, I'm sure you heard of her. Very special lady that left us recently. Okay, so we're starting with our story. If you remember, there was a war between the Jews and the Plishtim. And what happened was that after the Jews lose the battle, the Plishtim take the Aron, okay? And we have it here. We have the text. And what happened is that they take the Aron, the ark, and they put it in front of Vayatzigu oto etzel Dagon. They brought the ark next, and they put it next to Dagon, the god of the Plishtim. And what happened? Vayashkimu Ashdodim mimacharat b'nei Dagon nofel. Right? And then what happened was, in the morning, Dagon, the god of the Plishtim, early the next day, the Ashdodites found Dagon lying face down on the ground in front of the Ark of Hashem. And they picked Dagon up and put him back in his place. They thought maybe, it's fell. At the end of the day, it's like, it's made out of clay or something, whatever. But early the next morning, Dagon was again lying on the ground in front of the Ark. The head and both hands of Dagon were cut off, lying on the threshold. Only Dagon's trunk was left intact. Okay. So, of course, by doing that, the Plishtim are trying to symbolize that taking the Aron of God and placing it by the Dagon is not only that their victory is not only a military one, but also it's a religious one. It's a victory of religion. The god of the Plishtim won the battle against the god of the Jews. That is, both are represented by the god of the Jews, represented by the Aaron, the god of the Plishtim, of course, it's Dagon. And this is interesting. It's interesting because there's a debate among the rabbis. What was exactly the purpose of what's going on here? Whether they did that, the Plishtim took the Aaron and put the Aaron by their god, by Dagon, is it because it's kind of like showing disrespect to the Ark of God? Or because they do show respect to the Ark of God? Okay? Rabbi Yochanan says that yes, they do it because they want to show respect to the God of their enemy, the God that lost. And it says, the Midrash here, look here in the second source here, Kibdu Amru, Ze Eloha v'ze Eloha. They said, well, this is a God and this is a God. Yavo Eloha v'yishretz Eloha. Let's take the God and bring that God to the other God. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Omer, no. Kach yeh bischaran. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish had a different approach, and he said, Ela amru ze nutzach v'ze natzuach, yavo natzuach v'yit'abed lanotzeach. It means, he said, yeah, this is God and this is a God, but this is the winner, this is the loser. Let's bring the loser, so it's going to be subordinate to the winner. And that's the reason why they brought the ark there. And of course, what happened is, because we already read the text, is that was a major mistake on their part, because it brought them only trouble. First of all, Dagon itself, God, was first it fell, and then it was cut off. Its hands and head was cut off. Right, so it was humiliated. And later on, as we're going to see in a minute, the Plishtim themselves were afflicted with all sorts of plagues. Now, this idea of somebody falling on the face, and especially in the context of cutting off their hands and their head, is something that we're already familiar with. It's all over the Bible. There are a bunch of incidents that talk about this idea. It represents what? Surrender. Let's deja vu for a second to the story of Joseph and the brothers. Right? He said, "Vayiflu lefanav arza." Remember, the brothers, they fall down, they bow down to Joseph. Right? But here, the Plishtim, after the first time where it's only bowed down, the Dagon is bowed down to the ark because it falls, right? They see it as just a coincidence. They don't get it yet, right? And therefore, they place it back, see what's going to happen. And of course, in that case, the second time, the outcome was much more severe. Here, not only the Dagon fell, but also his hands and his head are cut off. And cutting off the head and the hands symbolizes humiliation. David is going to cut off the head of Goliath, right? The Plishtim, the Plishti that's going to be later on. And the Plishtim themselves cut off the head of Saul, when, right, in his last battle, right? And in Sefer Shoftim, in the book of Judges, we also find examples like that. So that idea of cutting off somebody's hands and head It's not only a victory, but also it's humiliation. And that is probably the meaning of that. Now, the description of the Makot, of those plagues that the Plishtim got, reminds us very, very much, both in terms of the language and in terms of the context, the description of the Makot, of the plagues on the Egyptians that we learn in the book of Exodus. And not only that, we see it in another way. If you look here in the third source, what do they do? Right? What do they do? The Aaron is there for 7 months and things are not going so great for them. You can read along the English. And they call their priests and their magicians and sorcerers and all those people. What can we do for this? We're suffering. And here's the important part. Remember that root? It's the same root that God has hardened the heart of Pharaoh. It's the same here. Techabdu. Make your heart hard. If you needed more of a context to what happened in Mitzrayim, here it is. Right there, black on white. Just like Pharaoh and the Mitzrim did. What do you want? As you know, when God made a mockery of them, i.e. the Egyptians, and they had to let Israel go, and they departed. So basically, their magicians, the Plishtim magicians, are telling, what are you doing? Have you not learned from history? Remember the story of the Jews leaving Egypt? Do you want to go through the same experience? So this idea of comparing what happened to the Plishtim and what happened to the Egyptians is obviously not mine. The magicians themselves of Plishtim already acknowledge that. They already say it. Now, I want to go to, interestingly, what's the process that was going on here? Here's the process that the Philistine went through. Right? So they're going through all those. We're going to look at that. I'm just going to move things here. Okay. So first of all, they see their Dagon is falling and all that kind of stuff, and they don't understand what's going on. They fail to understand. They don't understand this is coming from God. And things are going to progress and going to get worse and worse and worse. Then they get the first. God is punishing them. And then the people of Ashdod start to understand something is going on over there. They're starting to understand, and they say, "Lo yeshev Aron Elohei Yisrael imanu ki kashta yado aleinu v'al dagon Eloheinu." We don't want this. We don't want this Aaron here with us. He's giving us trouble, and he's giving hard time to our God Dagon. Here it's the first change, right? Okay. And then, but they still don't understand fully. They fail to fully understand what's going on here. So they have this emergency meeting. And they gather all the generals and everybody and say, what are we going to do to the, with the ark of God, giving us trouble? We don't know what to do. But they still don't understand. And therefore, they're going to come with the wrong solution. ויאמרו, גת ייסוב אהרון אלוהי ישראל וישימו את אהרון אלוהי ישראל. We're just going to change the geography. It was in Ashdod. We're going to take it to Kiryat Gat. Not going to do anything. Are you kidding me? You're going to change the venue and things are going to get better? You don't see what's going on. You don't see that this is a message from God. And indeed, because this is the wrong solution, they're going to be punished. And what's going on here? ועבדי המלך ארם אמרו אליו אלוהי הערים אלוהיהם על כן חזקו ממנו ואולם נלחם איתם במישור אם לא נחזק מהם. Over there, it's mountains. So he's strong, meaning the Jewish God is strong when it comes to combat in the mountains. But this is flat. So we can win here. So we're going to bring the ark, i.e. the God of Israel, we're going to bring him to a different location. It'll be fine. Okay. Wrong solution, obviously. They don't get it. They don't understand that this is the hand of God. And what happens? In Gat, in the second location, things are getting much worse. It's a major punishment. But it was a big balagan over there. God kills thousands of them. And of course, now they have a better understanding and they're going to do something about that, right? Because, some people start to understand, oh, okay, something's going on here. It's not about location. It's, right? And it says, they decide to bring it to Ekron. And the people of Ekron already saw what happened in Ashdod, and people of Ekron already saw what happened in Kiryat Gat, and they said, are you kidding me? You're going to bring this ark to me now? You want to kill me? Not doing that. I'm not accepting that thing. So the people of Ekron, they're going to be affected by the ark. They realize, I'm not doing that. And therefore, meaning, take this ark and take it back to the Jews. I don't want it. It's going to kill me. And while they're still figuring out how to do that, they're being punished already. It's starting already because they have the wrong solution. Again. Here, they're really, really suffering, which is going to get them to do the right solution and send it back to the Jews. So that's the process that's going on here with the Plishtim. It's very similar to what happened with Pharaoh. In the beginning, he doesn't get it. Then he understands it's about God and there's this power, but he doesn't fully understand that, and he's still playing that game. Oh, Moshe, come, take it away from me, the blood, the frogs, whatever. And then he tried to do something else. And he's like right with his magicians. And they did all, they were able to increase also the frogs, and they were able to, the magicians, the Egyptian magicians, and they were able to add also the shechin, the boils and all that kind of stuff, right? So the punishment is still going on. Only later on, at the end, after the suffering is so tremendous in the last plague, he's willing to let them go. There's a similar structure here. Okay. But, okay, why is it moving? Why is it not moving? What's this? Okay, here we go. So here I made it really, really clear how that works. What's the parallel between the two stories. First, in both stories, the makot, the plagues that are described, they are enemy of the Jews and in a very similar language. When it comes to Egypt, we find that root of vayach twice. Vayach et afar haaretz, you look at the first one here, vayach et afar haaretz, that's in the plague of Kinim, and then later on with the hail, vayach habarad b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. Twice the use of that pretty rare root called the vayach. When it comes to the Plishtim, again, vayach otam ba'afolim, vayach et anshe ha'ir. Twice the same root. Okay. In both cases, both the story of Egypt and the story of the Plishtim, they're called plagues. It's not only makot, it's called plagues. כי בפעם הזאת אני שולח את כל מגפותיי אל לבך, and in our story, כי מגפה אחת לכולם. In both stories, we see that all that stuff is coming from the hand of God. הנה יד השם הויה במקנך, or ותכבד יד השם אל האשדודים. The hand of God. Both cases, we're talking about not only that the nation is being afflicted, but also the God of that nation is being afflicted. Okay, we spoke about Dagon falling, and later on, his hands are and head is cut off. And the same goes for Mitzrayim. ובכל אלוהי מצרים אעשה שפטים. Right? I will. Okay. Not only that, those plagues, they ruin the land. ובכל ארץ מצרים תשחט הארץ. or ועשיתם צלמי המשחיתים את הארץ. In both cases, we have a very similar description of getting up early in the morning. Moshe, והשכם בבוקר בהתייצב לפני פרעה, and then the Ashdudim, וישכימו בבוקר ממחרת. So this is the same element of getting up early in the morning and see what's going on. Something had happened during the night. In both cases, both nations cry in a similar way, and it's highlighted. The magnitude of the crying is magnitude. והייתה צעקה גדולה בכל ארץ מצרים, a great cry in the entire land of Egypt. אשר כמוהו לא נהיית וכמוהו לא תוסיף. Such cry never occurred before and will never happen again. Same goes for this story of Plishtim. ויזעקו העקרונים ותל שוועת העיר השמיים, meaning their cry went all the way to the heavens. It was so terrible. Okay. Another thing is, in both cases, and we spoke about it a little bit, there's a consultation with magicians and sorcerers and all those people, all those voodoo people, right? Chartumei Mitzrayim versus Lakohanim Velakosmim, as we just read in the first slide. Right? Magicians of the Plishtim. Okay? Interesting. Very, very similar story. Now, there's another one. When it comes to the Plishtim, their cry is, there's something interesting about it. Look at the text here. I'm just going to move the thing. Okay, look at the text here. But when the ark of God came to Ekron, the Ekronites cried out, they have moved the ark of God of Israel to me. So okay, well, what are you talking about? We're talking about the acronyms. We're talking about plural. Why do you switch to singular, to me? To slay me and mine. They too send messengers, blah, 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 right? Send the ark of God of Israel away and let it return to its own place, that it may not slay me and mine. Whoa, is this a issue with grammar here? We're talking about a group of people, a whole city. They're switching to the singular language. Who is the one that talks here? Says my nation. So Radak, as you can see, says that who is the one that talks? It's the ministers of Ekron. Okay, fine. But we have difficulty with that. Because if it's the ministers of Ekron, it should say my nation, not me. Our, plural. Right? Therefore, it seems that the purpose of changing it from the plural to singular is to show us another connection, another connotation to what happened in Egypt. What happened in Egypt? Pharaoh. Pray to God, so he's going to take those frogs away. Mimeni ume'ami, from me and my nation. Well, over there, we understand why it's in the singular, because this is Pharaoh who the one who talks. But in the case of the Plishtim, we're talking about a group of people. Maybe it's the ministers, but it's still the group of people. So it seems, and in another place, he says also, "Vayishlach Paro vayikra leMoshe v'LaAharon," and Pharaoh called to Moshe and Aaron, "Vayomer aleim chatati," and he said to them, "I've sinned, hapam. This time I've sinned. Hashem HaTzadik, God is the righteous one, ve'ani ve'ami hareshaim, and I am the wicked one." So it seems, at least to me, that the switching from plural to singular is yet another similarity to the story of Egypt. So singular language, Elai and Ami, just like Mimeni ume'ami. Okay, next one. Hesitance. Both enemies are hesitant until they actually acknowledge, it takes them time to acknowledge it was indeed God's hand and it's coming from God. Ulai mikrehu lanu. That's what the Plishtim says. Maybe it's just coincidence when Dagon fell. And when it comes in this story of Mitzrayim, והכבד ליבו, ולא שמע עליהם, ולא שת ליבו. He's hardening his heart. He's not convinced. He's still not convinced. Takes them time. It's not something that they immediately understand. This is like a long process. There's an element of sending in both stories. In the story of Egypt, Shalach et ami, let my people go. Right? Shalach, nishloach, that's the root. What about the story of the Plishtim? Again, im meshalchim et Aaron Elohei Israel, al teshalchu, vayeshalchu. Okay, it's the same root. We're talking about this word of send. You're going to send the ark of God. Do not send the ark of God with nothing, empty-handed. And that's the next point. Not leaving empty-handed. If you remember, the Jews leaving Egypt, the Jews leaving Egypt are commanded to borrow gold and silver from their neighbors, from the Egyptians. God says to Moshe at the burning bush, when you're going to leave Egypt, you guys are not going to leave empty-handed. Same goes for the story of Plishtim. אם משלחים את אהרון אלוהי ישראל, אל תשלחו אותם ריקם. If you're going to send away the ark of God, do not send the ark empty-handed. You got to send it with something. What is this something in both cases? Gold. Right? ושאלה האישה משכנתה ומתגרת ביתה, כלי כסף וכלי זהב. The Jews borrowing gold from the Egyptians when they leave Egypt. And what do the Plishtim do? They put the ark on a carriage and they put 5 pieces of gold on one side and 1 piece of gold on the other side, whatever. And they send it with gold. So we see this tremendous similarity between the two stories. Question is, why? What's the purpose? Obviously, whoever wrote the story, whether it's Shmuel himself or it was written in a later generation, really doesn't matter. The point is, whoever wrote the story of the war against the Plishtim and the consequences of that war against the Plishtim at that time was familiar with the story of the Exodus, and therefore that person was trying very hard to make the connection between the two stories. Question is, what for? If you remember, last week we said that when the Jews lost the battle, it was because of spiritual reasons. Remember, like in the beginning, they brought the ark because they thought the ark itself is going to save them and going to help them in the battle. And they were mistaken to think that the ark itself has those powers that enable them to win the war. And of course, that was wrong. What happened when they brought the ark? I'm just going to move that a little bit so I can read. Here you have the English here. I'm going to read the Hebrew. וישמעו פלישתים את כל התרועה. Plishtim heard the noise. ויאמרו מה כל התרועה הגדולה הזאת במחנה העברים? And they wondered, what is this, all this commotion, all this shouting in the Jewish camp? וידעו כי ארון אדוני בא אל המחנה. And they noticed and they realized that the ark, the holy ark, came to the battlefield. ויראו הפלישתים כי אמרו בא אלוהים אל המחנה. And they started to get scared. And they frightened, and they said, whoa, God came to the battlefield. ויאמרו אוי לנו, כי לא הייתה כזאת אתמול שלשום. And they started crying, woe to us, nothing like this has ever happened before. Mi yatzilenu, woe to us, who is going to save us from this power, the might of that God? Elehem ha'elohim hamakim et Mitzrayim bechol makah b'midbar. This is the God who struck the Egyptians with all the plagues and all that stuff. What's going to happen? So they were afraid because they were familiar with the story of Egypt. And that goes exactly together with what we see in the song that the Jews sang at the crossing of the Red Sea. What did the Jews see? What did they say? They say, Shamu ami mirgazun, chil achaz yoshvei pelashet. People heard, they were agitated. Terror gripped the dwellers of Plashet. That's the Plishtim. They were trembling. That makes sense. But very quickly, they get their act together and they say, here in the last source here, התחזקו והיו לאנשים פלישתים. Get yourself together, people, פלישתים. פן תעבדו לעברים כאשר עבדו לכם והייתם לאנשים ונלחמתם. If you're not going to do that, you will become slaves to the Jews as they were slaves to you. Be men and fight. And somehow they're able to get together and victorious in the battle and even take the ark in captivity. Now we have a problem. On one hand, as we know, the Jews are worthy of punishment. And there was a special meaning to the fact that the ark was taken because God was trying to prove a point. It's not about the ark, it's about believing God. The ark is meaningless if there's no belief in God, as we said last week. It's just gold, it's just wood. However, on the other hand, taking the ark in captivity, it's a symbol, it's a desecration of God's name. And as I said in the beginning, the Plishtim consider that not only a military victory, but also it's a religious victory. Our God won the Jewish God. And if that's the case, that means our God is stronger than the Jewish God, which is stronger than the Egyptian God. This creates a big problem. And therefore, the description of the punishment of the Plishtim is described in a similar way to the plagues of Mitzrayim. This way, the text expresses this idea that the same God that afflicted the Egyptians did not lose anything from his power. And that God can duplicate the plagues of Mitzrayim again and bring it on the Plishtim. The same God won Egypt. It was before even the ark was done. And therefore, it's not the ark that has the power, but rather it's God that has the power. And having the ark in captivity means nothing because you can't capture the one, i.e. God, who is represented only or symbolized by the ark. You can't capture God. Therefore, because of that, we understand that the Jews lost the battle because of their own sins, nothing to do with the strength of the Plishtim, their own sins. And it's not because God is less powerful. This is how the Plishtim had to learn it the hard way. And I think that's the idea here also, to teach us the same message. It's not about God didn't lose anything from his power. Now, it brings us to a different question. Question is, what is the purpose of the plagues altogether? What's the purpose of that? And that's kind of almost like an open question. So, one approach, and our sages talk about it all the time, midah keneged midah. It's a punishment. Meaning, the Egyptians were bad, they treat us badly, therefore they deserve to be punished. So all those 10 plagues, the purpose here was punishment. But most of the authorities agree that there's something else going on here. There's also a process of education, and we can see it in the progression of the plagues. We can see it in the way it was done both in the story of the Plishtim and in the story of Egypt. Because otherwise, if it's just a punishment, you give a punishment and that's it, you move on. Why you prolong it? Why the the process is being intensified all the time? What's all the drama around it? Why letting them, go back and harden their heart and let them make a mistake and see if they're going to learn from that and know and punish them again and go back and forth 10 times with the Egyptians? What's the purpose here? And most of the authorities agree that indeed it's a process of education. It's both education for the Jews and for the enemies. And if we start to look at the plagues, not as punishment, but rather as a form of education, yes, very painful, but still the goal is to educate, then it has a different meaning. The purpose of the Makot is to cause me to see the situation in a better way. Even if I'm not the one who's being afflicted by the plague. The Jews, after they saw what happened in Egypt, were supposed to understand. You're supposed to get it, to understand, but they still didn't get the lesson. Same goes for the people of Beit Shemesh. The people of Beit Shemesh, what happens later on with the ark is being brought to the Jews, comes to the city of Beit Shemesh. And in the city of Beit Shemesh, they're happy about receiving the ark, but at the same time, they do not understand the responsibility that it entails. And therefore, they are being punished as well. Then the ark travels to Kiryat Ye'arim, where it's going to stay for many years until the times of David, who's going to bring it to Jerusalem. The people of Kiryat Ye'arim understood what it means to guard the ark. But the people of Beit Shemesh, they were happy about that, but they didn't treat it with respect. So they didn't learn the lesson watching the Plishtim, and they were punished. The Jews didn't learn the lesson watching what happened to the Egyptians, and they were punished in the desert again and again. Educate the enemy. The Egyptians had all those plagues in order so that the entire world is going to see that there is a din and there is a dayan, there is a judge and there's judgment. And that means, and no nation has the right to abuse a different nation. Same message to the Plishtim, of course. The God that saved Israel in the past is going to save the Jews again in the present and in the future. So if we are going with this assumption that Shmuel himself, as the Midrash says, Shmuel katav sifro, that Shmuel himself is the one, the author of the book of Shmuel, Shmuel knows that he's going to disappear from the stage at some point. And he knows that this solution with the Plishtim is not final. They're going to attack again and again and again. King Shaul is going to deal with them. King David is going to deal with them. But he wants to send a message. And his message, of course, is don't mess with the Jewish God. Yes, maybe you think you can deal with the Jewish people, but not with the Jewish God. That message has two meanings. One, it's for the Plishtim. God saved us previously from Egypt, and he's going to save us again. So perhaps it's some sort of a warning towards the Plishtim as well. But it's also towards the Jews. It's a message of hope. You have to understand, the Jews just lost the battle. This is written after the fact. They lost the battle. They're licking their wounds. They're buried their dead. And at that point, Shmuel is thinking about a hope. We were saved by God before, and we will be saved by God once again. It brings us, I don't have good answers for that, to the next one, which is plagues in general, or to be more specific, the plagues of today. Pandemic, COVID, diseases, global warming, you name it. What is the purpose? What's the point? Why are we having all that? Now, I don't have good answers for that. Okay? I don't know what's the message of COVID-19. I really don't. But I do believe that this is God's way trying to communicate with us. God is trying to tell us something is wrong. Something is wrong. I don't believe that necessarily this is just a punishment. I don't believe in that. I don't think that, we're experiencing COVID-19 because things are bad and this is our punishment. I really don't. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think this is God is trying to communicate with us. God is trying to, I'm just gonna stop that. God is trying to communicate with us and is trying to send us a message, trying to communicate with us, telling us something is wrong. It's a way to try to educate us. Perhaps it's a way to educate us. Perhaps it's a way to cause us to be a little bit more sensitive to what's going on, and to others. How many times we see tragedies every day, people who are sick, people who are poor, global warming, whatever you want, everything, you name it. And we, at some point, it's just like it passes next to us. We just ignore it. I understand there's a mechanism. It's you have to have some sort of a mechanism to deny that, because otherwise you're going to lose your sanity. I get it. But still, with all the tragedies now, doesn't make us a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more aware of what's going on, suffering of others. Doesn't encourage us to take our own health a little bit more seriously. And especially now that we're like a year into this pandemic, everybody knows somebody who in some way got hurt from COVID, whether it's physically, financially, whatever that is. People, I really think that's what God is trying to tell us. I don't know exactly what he's trying to tell us, but I do believe that he's trying to tell us something. That's his way of trying to communicate with us. What is the message? I don't know. I think it's open for interpretation. But I do believe that message is, I need you guys to be more aware, more sensitive. Take things more seriously. Whether that's going to happen when COVID is done or not, I don't know. I really don't. But I think that, plagues are not something that belong only in the Bible, something of the past. We have it. We have it now in the year 2021. What do we do about that? How are we going to continue our lives? How are we, I don't know. A lot of questions. I don't have good answers for that, but I honestly believe that this is God's trying to send us a message, trying to communicate with us. And if we're going to listen really, really well, maybe we'll be able to find also the answer. Thank you. Going to